So anti-gunners have convinced themselves that they may have found a loophole to destroying the Second Amendment. And they've passed a new law in Rhode Island that they hope is going to wind up being copy-pasted nationwide and eventually DC to destroy not only AR-15s, but guns, period. They think they found a loophole. Rhode Island has already passed this law. They're bragging about the fact that it avoids these so-called thorny issues of law. We call that the Constitution, by the way. What's going on, guys? Let's get into it. So Rhode Island's new law bans the sale, the manufacture, and the purchase, as well as the transfer, so sale, manufacture, purchase, transfer, of certain so-called military-style firearms, including specific types of semi-automatic rifles and shotguns. We're, of course, talking about AR-15s, AK-47s, things like that. The law does not ban possession. So if you already own one of these firearms, you can keep it, but you can't sell it within the state, manufacture new ones, or buy one after the law takes effect, which is July 1st of 2026. Pretty ironic that it's close to the 4th of July, but we're just pushing that to the side. Now, there are, of course, exemptions for military, law enforcement, as well as FFLs, I believe. So what exactly is their so-called definition of an assault weapon, i.e. an ordinary modern sporting rifle under the law? Well, we're talking about semi-automatic centerfire rifles that have the ability to accept a detachable magazines that are capable of holding more than 6 rounds. So I guess in Rhode Island's case, we're talking about banning the M1 Garand. I guess that's now an assault rifle. See how they keep moving the goalposts? Military style features like those evil and notorious pistol grips, folding or telescoping stocks, flash suppressors, or bayonet mounts, i.e. all the hits, all the favorites, all the time. They're back, Rhode Island style. So why do lawmakers and anti-gunners believe that this will work? Well, I already hinted at it. The legal focus here from their perspective is very strategic and nuanced. They think that by not banning possession and allowing people to keep their firearms, they can sidestep thorny Second Amendment questions, like the Second Amendment. They think that if they only ban sale, manufacture, distribution, that somehow, that's okay then. They hope to, in their words, slow the spread of these firearms without triggering, dad joke, triggering the most direct constitutional challenges, which in their view should only arise if you actually ban possession. So the idea is that, of course, over time, as current owners age out, sell them to folks out of state, die, you name it, these firearms will become rarer and rarer and rarer until you hit net zero. And of course, anti-gunners are out there with all their normal talking points, arguing about the fact that, hey, AR-15s are disproportionately used in mass shootings, and that by limiting their availability, they'll be able to reduce the risk of high-risk casualty events, which I noticed when I was doing research on this, that actually anti-gun Rhode Island legislators were pushing back on the need for this, pointing out they've never had one in Rhode Island, but again, we're setting that to the side for the moment. We're also, I suppose, going to be setting aside the fact that AR-15 style rifles are only misused for about, on average, maybe 60 to 65 deaths per year in America. And that is, without exception, a tragic number, but one that we have to put into perspective. Here are the annual death statistics for comparison. We've got ice skating at 17, AR-15s at about 60, 65, lawnmowers, 70, bees, 100, ladders, 150, autoerotic asphyxiation, 160, deer, 200, constipation, 207, hit by the bus, sometimes it's literal, 264, swimming pools, 380. I could keep going on and on and on. Of course, we barrel into the many hundreds of thousands and higher when we start talking about type 2 diabetes, heart failure, all this other kind of stuff. Despite the outsized media attention, rifles of all types, let alone AR-15s, account for a tiny fraction of gun deaths, let alone all preventable deaths in the United States. They rank between ice skating and lawnmowers. Keep that in mind. Most misused firearms in crime come from handguns, and most of those actually come from So really, it's a mental health issue before we even get to a crime issue. And it's certainly very, very much, again, statistically, we're not talking about AR-15s. So why the focus on this? Well, it's histrionics. It's the symbolism. It's the optics. AR-15s and similar firearms have become, of course, the face of gun violence in the media's and the public imagination, even though, again, we just reviewed these statistics. It ain't there. It just simply is not there. But they know that if they can crush and win on AR-15s, do you really think they're going to stop there? No, of course not. That is their beachhead to keep going. And that's the reason why, even if you don't care about AR-15s, if you don't own AR-15s, if you just say, look, I'm happy with my 1911 and my over-under shotgun, great, God bless. But you should care about these battles, because today it's AR-15s. A year from now, you get to these other things. That's the way this works, folks. I just want you to imagine how insane this is. If we took these exact same approaches and we just substituted other rights. Imagine if the government said, you know what, we're going to pass a new law, but we don't want to raise any of those thorny First Amendment rights. So we're not going to ban the possession of newspapers. We're just going to ban the printing, distribution, and sale of newspapers or internet, whatever, right? Do you see how this goes? We're not going to ban religion. We're just saying that the only churches, synagogues, mosques, whatever it might be, those are the only ones that are allowed to be here. And we're not issuing any more permits. So this is it, right? That's kind of exactly like what this is. So I'm sure that this is going to get the lawsuit work up here very shortly from one of our friends at one of these different groups, whether it's GOA, FPC, SAC, FRAC, National Association for Gun Rights, you pick one. Someone, I'm sure, is going to wind up smacking this. We will see what happens next, but rest assured, the incremental erosion is a dangerous precedent that must be confronted. Rights are not meant to be phased out by attrition. The Constitution protects enduring principles, not just the preferences of the current generation. And while Rhode Island's approach is somewhat novel, it's not entirely unique. Washington State has a very similar law, and other states are watching closely to see what happens in the courts. Proponents see this as a potential model to sidestep judicial scrutiny while achieving gun control goals and outcomes. And by the way, if you want to see me do a video coming as an ex-state prosecutor, criminal defense attorney, talking about what happens when criminals get guns, how are those cases pled out? What happens to the gun charges, the felon in possession charges, the whatever charges? Let me know. And I can statistically roll up my sleeves and go to work to see what actually happens, because I'd be curious about that. Let me just float that idea out there. Be sure to hit the like button, comment down below if that's something you're interested in. And we're going to close out with our ever popular quote of the day. This one comes from Greek thinker, philosopher Epictetus, who wrote, quote, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens," end quote. I had a camera, I had an internet connection. Here I am. What are you doing? Let me know down in the comment section below. Look forward to seeing the next one. Take care. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. If you enjoyed this one, please feel free to check out some of our other great content, and we'll see you in the next one.